Hi, everybody. It's Alicia Crane from Northwest Washington Civic Circle, and this is our final Candidate Connect conversation. This has been very educational. I hope that you all have been able to pick up on things from each candidate, being able to hear from them in context, and also having them answer some of your questions that you have submitted ahead of time or during the live stream itself. So we are closing out with Erika Barnett, who is running for position 3 for the Edmonds City Council. Hi, Erika.
Hi, Alicia.
Good to see you. And you're coming straight from your one of your businesses.
Yes,
here
I'm
in
coming to
Edmonds.
you from the Boathouse Tap Room down in Harbor Square.
Gotta love it. Okay, so you get the first 2 minutes. Tell them what you want them to know about you and your campaign.
Well, first, I just want to thank you for putting this series together. I know it was a bit of an exercise in herding cats to get all the candidates lined up and scheduled, and you have a very busy life. And I just want to say that I'm appreciative of you and all the history you have with civic activism within Edmonds and just being a real caring part of our community. So thank you. About myself. So I too am a part of Edmonds community. I've been very active for a number of years. My name is Erika Barnett. My husband and I own the Sailor Sea Brewing Company here in downtown Edmonds. We've got the original location, the brew pub up at 5th and Dayton. And then down here in Harbor Square, we have the Boathouse Tap Room where we actually brew the beer that we make and distribute amongst the many guests we have, and also are a live music venue. So we host a lot of events and things down here, and we've really embraced the community. Placemaking was a big part of why we opened the type of business that we've done. Community's always been important to us. I'm a mother of two. We wanted to live and work in a community where we could just really become engaged in all of the activities and all the wonderful things that Edmonds has to offer us. I also work at Microsoft. Have worked at Microsoft, I should say, as a global director for strategic operations and business development there. And so wearing two hats, that global corporate strategy gig, and then also owning and running a small business in town has kind of shaped my perspective in that I can see things in really big picture, broad brushstrokes down to the minutia of, cleaning out the restrooms and managing budgets and payroll down to the nickel and dime and, worrying about the price of chicken. I've been a member of the Edmonds Chamber of Commerce for over 10 years on the board of directors. I was the board chair for the Chamber of Commerce for 2 years during the COVID years when our businesses were struggling mightily. And then also when we lost our CEO, Greg Urban, moved his family back east, and I was part of Ryan, who is now our CEO, and he's doing a fabulous job, Ryan Crowther. Mm-hmm. So community is really important. We've also done a lot of fundraising and giving back to the community because we are just all in. Like, we have skin in the game. I live here, I work here, my family's being raised here. I'm just all about Edmonds. And so really why I'm running for city council is because I care about this city, and I believe that I have the skill set and the personality and tenacity to actually help us get out of the financial situation that we find ourselves in and navigate a path forward where we will find the vibrancy and prosperity that I know this city deserves.
Right. So you are definitely what I would call a known entity in the city, even though this is your first time running for office here locally. And there's a lot of new names and new faces kind of coming into the running, which I think is pretty exciting. But it's also going to be a little scary, especially because of all the things that are happening. I mean, I know Edmonds can feel like everything that's happening here is just so Edmonds, but I mean, all cities around us are dealing with financial fallouts and budget issues and levies and all these things that we're going to do. And so I think for a lot of people who are, I'm going to say the lay persons who are going to be voting this year, there isn't the luxury of, it's all incumbents with other people and people kind of just go straight to the incumbent. There's not that way this time around, especially for the seat that you're running for. It's technically an open seat. And so you started to kind of go into some of the things I wanted to talk to you about first is your background. So again, Jeff, your husband, and you guys own your two businesses. You've been involved in the chamber. You've talked about your professional background in global marketing and business strategy. Um, what about what's happening right now, though? With all kind of the stress and the strife that's been coming up with different issues, what still made you go, yeah, let's throw my hat in the ring?
I'm sorry, Alicia, you cut out for me for just a quick second there. The
Oh
stress
no, sorry
and
about that.
strife for what?
I was going to say, so with everything that's been going on, kind of the stress and strife around some of this decision making that needs to happen financially in the city, what still made you go, I'll throw my hat in the ring anyway?
Well, I was invited to sit in by Mayor Rosen on the budget prioritization panel last summer. So he brought in a bunch of financial experts from across the city and got us in a room, and we went over the budget and the research that had been done with the community on kind of priorities and where the citizens of Edmonds think that money should be spent. And we were taking a look at it through that lens. And what I found most interesting was while that was an interesting intellectual exercise, it wasn't going to give Mayor or any of the staff or the directors the information that they really needed on what are they getting for the dollars that are being spent in their departments. There were no real KPIs associated with our city's budget. So they're just line item budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it totals out and it pencils out at the end of the day, and you have head count and you have the dollars and cents. But, we don't know how many permits are processed a year. We don't know the average wait time for a permit. We don't know if we added another person to the planning department, would that shorten that time? How many more permits could we process if we did that? I think even Michael Cluxton was asked in a city council meeting recently if he was given 2 headcount, what would that do to the planning department? And he said, well, I think it would probably help, but he couldn't tell you what the output would be, how that would increase. Mm-hmm. And so without having that kind of insight and information, I really don't think that we are going to be able to prioritize and ensure that we are making sure that all of our tax dollars are being spent in the most effective and efficient manner. And so because I have done this for corporations for years, I think that I can help set up some business requirements that council can put forward to those city departments so that they can start to track and measure some of those things so that they'll actually know what they're getting for those dollars. And so then when we have budget conversations in the future, we'll actually be able to have real conversations about output and deliverable and make those kinds of trade-offs as to where we need to reprioritize, or maybe there's some things that need to be modified to be made more efficient, or combining of resources for similar outcomes and that type of thing. So there is some efficiencies I still think that can happen within our existing budget, while we also look to increase and bring in additional revenue, because inflation isn't going away and we're already in debt. So we do need to take steps to look ahead and make sure that we have a future-proof plan for city revenue.
Yeah. And your example resonated with me, especially someone that was on the planning board for 6 years. So I got to see some of the things that was happening with the planning staff and some of the shortcomings and trying to get the codes updated and all these other things, but not having enough people or manpower to be able to get some of these things done, which was kind of a double-edged sword for a lot of people, right? It's like, we need this to happen, but we can't afford to have as many people as we probably need to be able to do it. So we can't spend the money, but we still want this thing to happen. But I do want you to touch a bit more. I think one of the interesting things about your candidacy is the fact that you also have been an active part of the Edmonds Chamber. And of course, one of the things that happens in the city is that people are kind of confused about the relationship between the city and the chamber, especially when it comes to community activities and events. And of course, you've worked on some of these, including the 4th of July and tree lighting. My wish list is for whoever comes on council is to be able to put something together to help people understand, what's the city and what's the chamber. But there also does seem to be a bit of a not cohesive relationship between the chamber and the city when it comes to getting these things done. How would you kind of help work that out?
Well, I know that Ryan and Todd Tatum have been working very closely together since, he came on. we really are about the economic vitality of Edmonds. So in Todd's former role as our economic development director, we made sure that he attended all of our chamber board meetings that we had every month. He provided us with an update on what the city was working on. We were able to share with him insights or things that we knew from across our businesses or industries that might be relevant information for him to take back to his team. But we have done a lot of partnerships, like the events themselves. I mean, the city is essentially our venue, right? So we are taking over Civic Field, or we are taking over, Fifth and Main for the car shows. And so we do rent out like that space. We get permits. We have to pay for the officers. The chamber pays for all of these events. So these are all of your local businesses funding these events on behalf of the city. It's just one of the ways in which we like to give back to the people that give so much to our businesses throughout the year. And it's just a great sense of community. And it's honestly why we've all chosen to take up shop here in Edmonds. Mm-hmm. But the tree lighting, 4th of July, the car show, the downtown trick or treat with all the little kids running around in their costumes, it's all part of what makes Edmonds Edmonds. And the chamber is really the heartbeat of what makes that happen. But the city is our partner in making sure that it is all done safely and within codes, and that we are following all of the public safety regulations for public gatherings like that. But back to kind of Todd and Ryan, they're doing economic development for things like the World Cup soccer that'll be coming to Seattle next year. Right. So they're working on media kits and branding and watch party things and stuff that we can be doing across Edmonds and our various businesses to try to catch a bit of that World Cup fever and maybe lure some of those tourists to come on up via the light rail and check out Edmonds while they are in town.
Well, let's make sure we have an offline conversation about that, because I'm on the sports commission and the Seattle Sports Commission that's helping bring that all up here. And I'm trying to make sure that Snohomish County, and specifically Edmonds, gets a good chunk of that thoroughfare activity.
Yes, absolutely.
Happening. Okay. So the other thing I've asked people about too are their endorsements. And again, there's different mindsets around what that looks like, what that shouldn't look like. And of course, I didn't see any organizational ones on your site, but you definitely seem to appear to have kind of a well-rounded group, if you will. So, that falls into different political affiliation categories. Including Ryan. So do you want to talk about kind of what your thought process or mentality was about gaining endorsements as part of your campaign?
Yes, this is a nonpartisan position, so I'm running as a nonpartisan candidate. I felt like by choosing a partisan role, I would be alienating a portion of the city that maybe did not align with that party. And since I'm here to represent everyone, I am going to take a nonpartisan stance. I'm here for Edmonds. I'm all about Edmonds. And I would like to leave the national political discourse out of our small town and make sure that we focus on things that are important to those of us here, boots on the ground. And so in doing so, I didn't feel it was right to take endorsements from organizations that might have strings or ideologies or things that may or may not apply to the issues that Edmonds is facing. And so I lined up with where a lot of people are kind of in that more centric, moderate role. So I've got, from the Snohomish County, I've got Jared Neat and Nate Nearing, who have opposite political parties, but they both are the whatever the right answer is the answer that I will support kind of mentality, which I appreciate. I've got over 150 to 200 just general Edmonds citizens, business owners, people that are involved in our nonprofits and our civic activities, PTA people, teachers, just you name it. I'm endorsed by the people of Edmonds, and I'm proud of that fact. And I keep adding names to the list every day. So as people come on board and hear me talk at meet and greets and get excited about what I can bring to City Council, and let me know that they would like me to add their name to the list, I go ahead and do so. And I'm very pleased to see the kind of backing that I get, and that it does cover a broad swath of folks across the town.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about, we're going to get into the taxes and levy lift stuff in a moment, but let's talk about some of your other key focuses that you talk about as part of your campaign. So one is public safety, and you talk a little bit about, why this is a priority for you, is that safety isn't just a priority, that it's a foundation of our quality of life, and you have your focus areas there. Are there any specific examples you want to talk about that you want to see as part of the public safety push?
I just want to maintain our public safety. It's one of those things that can get taken for granted when it's working well. So we have, world-class first responders, police here in Edmonds, and we're very fortunate to do so. My kids, when they were even younger, we could be dining out someplace in Edmonds, and if they were done with dinner and they wanted to walk up the street to go get gelato, they were free to do so. It was safe for them to go walk, 2 blocks over to go get ice cream. And the only thing you have to worry about is look out for cars. Edmonds is the kind of place where if somebody leaves their purse behind, not only will it not get necessarily stolen, but somebody may chase after you to make sure that you get it back. People, post pictures on Facebook about lost chickens and trying to help them find their owners. I mean, that's the kind of town we are. And we need to bear in mind that we are still only 12 miles away from Seattle. And I found out at the police meet and greet that was at the Francis Anderson Center a couple of weeks ago, I believe, that Seattle, of course, you might guess, is the most densely populated city in the state. But Montlake Terrace is the second most densely populated city in the state. And I didn't realize that. And so we have all of these people like right next door to us, right? And that we need to make sure that we are taking care if things come into our city, elements that maybe were not part of this Edmonds feel, that we do have our first responders and we are backing them up, and that they are able to do the jobs that they need to do to help us maintain that quality of life. Because without having that freedom to gather, like having our 4th of July parades and having thousands of people in one location and not worrying about bad actors coming in and disrupting our events. We do a lot of arts things. We do a lot of charity events. And I think that it would really change the way Edmonds feels if that became something that we were now concerned about. So I do believe that having a safe place to live is that baseline that allows all of the creativity and the commerce and the wonderful things that the people who live here are able to do and contribute and live out our lives together are predicated on feeling safe as kind of that Maslow's hierarchy first step.
No, resonates. Now, quality of life, and I know it's kind of a catch-all, depending on how you're kind of looking at it from your life point of view. But talk about what that really means for you. And I know one of the areas, or one of the key focuses on here that kind of stood out to me was investing in accessible public spaces, community programs, and recreational facilities. Can you add around that? Like, do you have any particular examples around that accessibility of those public spaces? Because accessibility can mean a lot of different things.
It can. I mean, it can go all the way to ADA, to just people being able to get to wherever you're going. The quality of life, I think everybody comes back to the bowl and the magic and all the great things that happen here. But part of that is because we do have public gathering spaces in our area. We've got Civic Field. We have the ability to kind of block off around Centennial Plaza and close the streets there. And not every neighborhood has that. Many do. But looking at investing in taking what's great about the bowl and seeing where it makes sense as we are looking to develop growth, keeping in mind the charm and the character of our neighborhoods when we're building out, adding in more of those spaces for community gatherings, whether that's at Five Corners or maybe that is, down in the hospital or the International District, I think would be a fabulous place for us to be able to have a public gathering space. Yeah. Whether that is with, as a development comes in and reimagines portions of the Highway 99 area, I would love to see us be able to hold night markets and do really wonderful kind of creative things in those neighborhoods as well.
Let me talk about that night market for a second. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I did talk about that in one of the other conversations where, again, kind of coming out of the pandemic for a year, for a season, South Edmonds did get a little bit of love, right? They did have a night market that was happening during the summer. You had the secondary city hall that was in that plaza, and then, the next summer, nothing. And like no announcement about it, saying this isn't why we're doing it anymore. It was like it just kind of happened for a second and it's gone. So it sounds like that's something you would advocate to help bring back, because I think there's a lot of voters within that South Edmonds area that feels like, okay, when they talk about green space and activity and fun, it's the bowl. But if you want to build things up, it's 99. No, it's like
No,
why does
I
it
think
have to be that
that, yes,
disparity?
exactly. So
Yeah.
as we think about the development and the planning, I mean, it does make sense to be mindful of our infrastructure and our transportation corridors and things like that when we're looking to add. But there are also areas of our town that are ripe for a little bit of a revitalization. We've got a bunch of buildings down, like the Family Fun Center that closed down on Highway 99, and it's all boarded up. And that was once a revenue generator for the city, right? It was an activity center, and now it's a public drain because the police are being drawn there all the time because bad things are happening. And so if we can revitalize and bring, quality businesses back into our core, think of the way that Linwood's 196 is, right? Where they've got all those vibrant businesses with people coming and going, and it's safe to walk those streets in that neighborhood. Because there's people like you and I there that are going in and out of the stores. And if you're trying to do something you're not supposed to be doing, you don't want a bunch of people around watching you do that. So it has the secondary effect of actually helping us reduce crime and theft in those areas as well. Mm-hmm. But as part of bringing in that development and revitalization, we can add in community plazas and things like that along the way there. So we're not necessarily having to gather in a parking lot, which I think is right. What we've had to do in the past. We can actually create, park space and gathering space for people. And that's what I want to make sure that we keep an eye on as we're looking to bring in investment and think really thoughtfully about our future. Like, what do we want it to look like in 10 and 15 years? And how can we take the things that we know work well and then apply them across the rest of the city so that everybody has that same Edmonds charm? I mean, all of Edmonds should feel like Edmonds, not just parts of Edmonds.
Sure. So let's go. So you said investment. So let's talk about being a good steward of the citizens' money. So we'll talk about the tax levies and stuff in a second. But outside of that, again, there's been a lot of conversation around what's going on with budgeting. I know that the city moved to like a biennial budget, right. And they just had like the midstream of that this past Friday at their retreat. Is that a product? Is that one of those things that you would like to remain, to stay in kind of a biennial kind of budgeting session, to be able to forecast a lot better and kind of plan on a biannual basis? Or what is, with your experience, what do you feel like would make the most sense for the city?
Well, they did meet again. They did go over everything. It was still a lot of anecdotal information, right? It was, everybody had a PowerPoint slide and they listed out basically all of the things that their department was responsible for. It didn't have anything like, we forecast that we were gonna, process 40,000 permits this year, and we've done 20,000. And we thought that our average time to get a permit was going to be 6 weeks, but it's actually 8 because we're understaffed. And so if you gave me another person, I could probably drop that down to 5. Those are the kinds of conversations that really need to be had in these discussions, so that you can see what your investment is and what you're getting for them, as opposed to just a list of service and some anecdotal, conversations about the staff. But they just don't have the data, right? They're not tracking it and they're not recording it. And so that is something that I would like to see brought forward. We need to know for the Parks Department, we've maintained the parks, but like, how many man hours of lawn mowing does it take a year to maintain our parks? Should be something maybe that we know. I don't know. Yeah. Just thinking about, what are we, how, like I mentioned with the permits, how long does it take to get a permit? And if you added resources, what would that look like? If you had to do a budget cut, what would that look like? How much longer would it take to get a permit? Those are the kinds of metrics that you use in business to determine, is this program, if 80% of the money that I'm spending on this program is going to the overhead and management of it, and only 20% is going to outcome, then that is probably not a worthwhile endeavor for us to be undertaking, or we need to revisit how we're doing it, because we are spending way too much time talking about it and project managing it and not enough time actually doing the thing that it was designed for. So you're only going to know that if you're actually able to measure those output deliverables. So that's something that I would take a look at. It's not just annual and biannual, but I think we should be looking at 2 and 3 year planning as well, because if we're going to shift over from a kind of property tax based revenue model, if we're going to start looking at, moving more toward a sales tax and a business development and bringing in more and different types of businesses and attracting them into Edmonds, then you have to start doing long-term planning for that sort of thing. And so there needs to be, the business development component of that, where you're giving updates on leads and on conversations that are being had and those types of things. So it's not just every 6 months, but you're actually looking, 18, 24 months out as well.
Yeah.
Because those projects take a while.
A big while. Let's talk about taxes, since you just also touched on that as well. So obviously we had the RFA at the beginning of the year that needed to be voted on. It was passed. And now there's a lot more coming down the road. I made a reference that kind of dated myself earlier today, where I said, I made a comparison to a Dagwood sandwich, right? So it's like, because all these layers, right? And so it's the RFA, it's this potential levy lid lift, it's the cultural access sales tax, even though that got pushed down, but it's going to be voted on, right? The public safety tax that's been delayed to the beginning of next year, potential B&O tax, and now potential paid parking. What do you say to residents that's like, we went from kind of nothing to a lot of being taxed right at the same time? Do all of these need to be passed right now, if at all? What do you say to those folks, that whether they can afford it or not, because that's a whole other set of discussion. It's not necessarily if, I have enough money, I can pay that, but is it still fair to feel like you have 4, 5, 6 different things that are going to be coming upon you on top of everything else that's being taxed upon right now? What do you say to the frustrated layperson that is like, what? Business person? What do you say to that resident?
I say to you that I hear you. I think I'm cutting out. Am I still streaming?
Yeah, just a little bit. We'll get you back in a second. Keep going though.
All right. I say that I hear you, that I agree, that it feels like the perfect storm, like everything is coming in all at one time. What was that movie? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. That's what it feels like is happening. But I think that fact is that many, many people have put off, increasing the taxes, and they all came up with the same idea all at the same time. So we've got the RFA, we've got the state taxes, we've got the proposed levy lid lift, we've got the arts, and the public safety tax, I think, was another one.
On top of everything else up there, yeah.
Did I remember them all? There's a lot, and each one of them is talking about the pros and cons of them in isolation of the others, and very, very few are talking about the compounding impact of all of those happening to families all at once. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a very real situation. Not everybody has a kind of job where they get a cost of living increase every year, right? If you're a senior, you're on fixed income, and this, not only are your taxes going up, but just inflation in general, like your cost of goods, your cost of living is going up, but you're kind of staying at the same point. Yeah. So I absolutely understand why they're asking for these, the need for funding for things like public safety and the parks and our essential services. But I also believe that residents deserve full transparency on how that number was calculated. How did we come up with that? Is that truly based on a zero-based budgeting strategy? So if we were to form the city starting today and set up these departments, is this how much it would cost us to do so? I feel like there's a lot of, in any organization, things start to be, well, that's just how we've done it. And it's not maybe the most efficient, or maybe it's outdated. there are a ton of new processes and tools that we could be using to help streamline and free up staff time. I've mentioned AI. I think I wrote a blog article about that a while ago. I sat in on a government and AI workshop where they've got cities that are helping out in their planning department, talking about, using AI. I want to build a fence on my property. Do I need to pull a permit for that? So rather than having to go through and use planning man hours, that's something that the AI tool can go in and scan the code and give you a simple layman's answer, yes or no. Help me fill out this form. What do I need to know for this? Like, AI can be used for a lot of things. Public record requests are something that are still manual right now with the city, which is silly. I know we have to digitize all of the work, but we really need to prioritize that and get that to be something that is much more streamlined so that we can put our human resources into much higher value tasks.
Yeah, and we definitely have an active group of people that like to get PRRs, in this city.
I know. Every piece of data on municipal plumbing for the last 30 years was one I think I came across. I was like, wow, that's a lot.
And for those that are watching this, the slide I had up before was just illustrating what Erika was talking about, her blog. I was telling you that I think you're only one of the candidates I've seen that actually has like a blog that you're, sharing, with your information. So I think that's kind of cool. More people should do that, especially as a way of a communications tool. So back to the levy lift specifically. So do you have any concerns that kind of Proposition 1, which is what it's going to be called on the ballot, is going to create a level of contention beyond the vote? Because one of the things I was alerted to maybe 30 minutes before we started this is that I knew that Yes on Edmonds campaign had already had their stuff out. They have a page. They're emailing a lot, but they're emailing. And then now it sounds like the No on Prop 1 campaign just launched. Yeah. And it was interesting for me to see kind of who are some of the supporters behind each one. So the top line is the no on Prop 1, so no on the levy lift, with one of the current council members, one of the former council members, someone that was running, and a community member. And then on the yes side, obviously there's a handful of other current council members and mayor and a few others. So you can answer this how you want. Like, I don't know if you're particularly landing on one side or the other, even though I feel like at one of the forums that might be a yes or no hard answer. What do you feel like, as someone who could potentially be on council and kind of knowing where most of your council members land on this, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that it's going to not be something that breaks this city kind of on a connection piece, or what do you think?
I hope not. I honestly think that whether the levy passes, whether it passes or fails, I do think that we do need to be tighten our budgeting process and expand our business development. If it passes and we are able to get our business development ramp, moving up and start to get the tax revenue into the city that I think that we deserve, we can end of life the levy before the 6-year limit. There is flexibility in that. So while it's not normal for government to give money back once they have gotten the vote of the people to take it, it's not unheard of. I mean, I've lived through, I'm dating myself, Ronald Reagan cut taxes, right? So it's something that can happen if we are able to find our way forward and get on a firmer ground. I understand why the current city council is advocating for the levy, because we're in a tight spot, and those new revenues aren't identified. They're not planned for yet, beyond, the cutting that they've done. And they've done cutting with the structure as it stands, and doing the rework to have to go in and kind of rip things out, like scrape the paint off the door jamb because the door doesn't close anymore. Yeah. That's not as fun as just throwing a new coat of paint on the outside of it. But we need to do that work. So regardless of whether it passes or fails, I still think that we need to kind of dig back in and make sure that we have that transparency. There are other cities around here who were able to totally open their books and their transparency, and you can see everything, every dollar, what it's spent on, how they're using it, what are their outcomes. And so I think that we can adopt some of those practices. So I'm I'm hopeful that whether it passes or fails, if we can become more transparent, and I think one of the biggest reasons we're unable to be transparent is that we just have lack of clarity ourselves. So my goal is to help provide clarity, and then we'll find our way forward from there.
And I think there are people that agree with you on that. I think there's and I think there's a lot of trust issues that come from that as well.
Yeah.
And so we started already kind of going into the series, the third series of questions. We're talking about budgets and financials, but also community assets. And so one of the things I kind of want to hone in on with you, to the best of your ability to talk about them, is I feel like one of the reasons why we have a lot of new people running for office is based off of community assets, or the threat of community assets going away. We remember Hummingbird Hill Park and Big Red, and that kind of got people fired up, and they're like, okay, now I'm going to run. And now community assets are also kind of being used, for lack of a better word, again, in this yes and no on, Prop 1. It's like, if we say no, then we're going to lose these community assets and we're not going to have them. And there's someone kind of saying, like, no, that's not true. There's the interview I did with Will Chin that has, garnered some issues with that. And I said, I just asked a question. I didn't know that was going to be the answer. I wasn't trying to start anything. But of course, that opened up a can of worms for some people. It's like, okay, well, do we need the levy? Because now we have a sitting council member who's a CPA, a finance person, that's saying, hey, we still have something over here. And others saying, nope, it's not that cut and dry. But it is that community asset piece that continues to kind of be the driver for one of the campaigns. Do you feel like, one, that's fair, that is all kind of resting on the messaging around the loss or keeping of community assets? And then two, what really should be happening with this? How should we be looking at this as a city? Are we at risk, really, of losing certain community assets, even if it does fail? Or, are we going to get all that we said we're hoping to get if it passes? So I think I feel like there's only been one side of the coin being addressed as opposed to the second. But what is your take on how it's being talked about and presented?
I think that there's some creative licensing that's been taken with some of how this has been presented, as one does in marketing, right? You spin your case or your story as it suits you. So you can take data or facts or whatever and twist them one way or the other. So unfortunately, that leaves it up to the voter to kind of have to navigate through all of that and look to the truth. But what I know is that public assets, when we're talking about parks and our community centers and things like that, it is not easy for a city to sell something like that. That is entrusted. Those are public assets. Those do not belong to a single mayor or a single council person. Those belong to the people of the city. And so there's an entire civic process that you have to go through before you could begin to sell that. There's a whole legal process that you have to go to before you can begin to do something like that. It is very lengthy. It is very public. And it is also very foolish, because you never give up real estate. Okay, that's just something that you just don't do, because whatever value that may have today, in 10 years from now, it will be way more than that. And in 20 years, it will be way more than that. And we will never be able to purchase it back because of that escalation in value. Yeah. So you do not let go of public real estate. The University of Washington, when they moved to their campus, they kept all of their downtown Seattle real estate, and it is making them so much money right now. Mm-hmm. It is a revenue generator. And I know I will add to this, because I got asked this at one of my my meet and greets by somebody from the opposing camp about, if you turn it into something other than what it is, then it's not really maintaining it. But my argument is that if you maintain its function, but we bring in, grant money, and we bring in public-private partnerships. So for something like the Francis Anderson, you find yourself a Boys and Girls Club or a YWCA or somebody like that can help you with the management of that and the maintenance of that, but still keeping the facility open for public use, but they're actually able to pay market rates for rent. That those are things that we could take a look at as a city and kind of make sure that we are able to maintain our assets, because if we just let them degrade, then they lose their value as well. And it costs so much more to rebuild something than it does just to maintain it. So we need to make sure that we are being a little bit smarter as a business person when we're talking about our assets and the parks, and working smartly with our parks department. If maintenance is really an issue, how can we use volunteers? Like the Hummingbird Park, there are so many people that live around there that's essentially their backyard. They'd be happy to go mow it, right? Like if they would be allowed to. So it's talking with our unions and being like, look, I know you guys are short staffed. Back to the whole, how many lawn mowing hours do we have manpower for? And can we get an agreement that there are certain tasks that can be done by community members to kind of lend in and take a hand? But we're not going to get rid of those. Those are part of what makes Edmonds Edmonds. And if anything, I want to make sure that the parks are not only not sold, but that they are maintained, that they're not in the state that they are now, that the bathrooms are not locked, that they're stocked with toilet paper, that it's not vandalized, that, you know, it is safe to send your kids to play there. It doesn't do us any good to have a park if it's overgrown and there's like, you know, unsavory activity happening there. It's like, yeah, we kept the park, but to what end? So we need to make sure that not only are they maintained, but that we keep them and they're well funded.
I have a bid question for you.
Okay.
So if or when the B&O tax happens, will that be a double onto what those that are part of bid would have to pay into?
Yes.
Oof. I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Okay.
So there's already a state B&O tax that we all have to pay. Then those of us that are in the business improvement district have a tax that's levied on us for that. And then if you did a city B&O tax, then that would be on top of those two. So it's a lot. And I have had conversations, I think I even had one with the mayor where he was asking about my position on the B&O tax. And I think that there is a misunderstanding that they can somehow tier the B&O tax to give grace to certain businesses or do different percentages or things like that based on business types. But really, it comes down to it's the state's B&O tax. So if you adopt it, it has to be the same way that it is done across the state. So for example, if you were a business that does business in Edmonds and you also do business in Montlake Terrace, you can't have two different B&O tax strategy calculations between the two of them. They have to be uniform. It would be an accounting nightmare for a business to try to figure that type of thing out.
Yeah.
So it's standardized. And so there isn't really as much customization, I think, as our city officials were thinking that there might be allowed. It's just, it's kind of a one size fits some, but not all.
I just feel like there's still a lot of, again, it's the Dagwood sandwich again. I feel like there's a lot that's happening at one time. And I think that's what's throwing a lot of people off. And even wanting to support something that we absolutely do need. Because it's like, okay, now there's 5 things potentially that they're doing. So now we're going to go into audience questions. And so one of them comes from Christina M. And her question is, what 3 action items would you recommend to increase city revenue stream?
Oh, well, first one is don't adopt B&O taxes because that's going to hurt our retailers. It's going to potentially drive businesses out, which is the opposite of what we're wanting to do. So reducing taxes, ironically, actually does increase revenue. We need to increase our tourism dollars and bringing people into the city to explore Edmonds, you know, all of the things that we're working on, bringing people in down to the city, enjoying our waterfront. And part of that is then also working to revitalize our true commercial corridors. Downtown is the charm and the small mom and pop shops, but they're never going to be some big revenue stream for the city. It's just not the nature of those types of businesses. We need to look at creating something like Linwood's 196 strip in our Highway 99 area where we have those larger established retailers and restaurants and things of that nature, which will bring in a lot more revenue than we would get from increasing property taxes. And then it has a secondary effect of having then those neighboring, so it opens up more space for more mom and pop shops to come in as kind of those secondary step down tier businesses that are next to and near to those as the anchor locations. We don't have a lot of those right now, and those that we have are kind of plagued with theft, frankly, in that area. Like our highest theft area for ours are those smaller businesses in that section of our city. And so I think if we can get more traffic, more visibility, bring in a lot more vibrancy and retail to those, we will then open up more opportunities for mom and pop shops and for them to see progress. We have like the most amazing international district cuisine. We're in like Met Magazine. Our restaurants are listed frequently. And I have, as a Chamber of Commerce, like wanted to do some sort of big public push for, bringing people in to explore Edmonds. And, you can dine in some of these amazing places and then go, hit the shops and go downtown and really take on Edmonds as a staycation or a daycation rather. We're getting a hotel. We only have the one now, but we're getting another one. So more of a vacation destination. Using the light rail, I would like to see us bring in some kind of a shuttle service between the light rail and downtown Edmonds to encourage people to kind of come down. I know parking paying is like the thing that is painful to some, but that is a revenue idea. We can do it in such a way where we're really focusing more on the out-of-town visitors and do parking passes for citizens. But, even at our space up the street, we'll get people that'll park in front of the restaurant and they'll go take the ferry or they'll go and they'll leave their car there all day long. And so customers can't come and park in front of the restaurant to come in to eat because the car's been parked there for 9-10 hours. So it would help a bit if we had some parking enforcement. But it's another possible revenue stream where you could just do it with QR codes. We're not talking about putting in infrastructure. There's low cost, potentially at least, some return. I don't know how high it would be. It depends on how many folks we have visiting. But again, in that AI for government, these were some of the things that other municipalities were using. And it's the whole, if you did get a parking ticket, if you pay it right then and there, it's already 50% off. So you're not clogging the court systems, contesting tickets, because it's already reduced to what it would have been reduced to if you showed up in court. So there's a bunch of different ways in which we can start to build revenue, but each one of those is not something you can flip the switch on next week. You're going to have to work a little bit at it.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. So this one kind of is from Kevin H, and it kind of touches a little bit upon what you talked about during the public safety aspect of your vision. But also, so Kevin wants to know, what vision do you have to reduce polarization and improve community engagement in Edmonds to help our decision makers improve policy making? And this could probably actually be two separate questions, because I think there is definitely some outside of our general polarization, let's just be honest, Edmonds can sometimes be polarizing. But I think in this current climate of what's happening with public safety and ICE, and you just had the fake officer that was representing himself to be an Edmonds officer and doing all these things. I think there are members of our diverse community, not that we have a large percentage of that here, but that are not feeling quite safe or wanting to show up to certain things because they're afraid that, they're going to be judged a certain way by what's been happening with the current national level of polarization. What have you been seeing, as a business owner? That's someone that's been out and about in Edmonds even before becoming a candidate. What are you seeing, and what would you hope to do to be able to continue to create community here in Edmonds?
Well, one of the first things I always start with is looking to find common ground, right? When you start off in your entrenched camp of, I like chocolate, I like strawberry, or wherever you are, we need to start with the fact we're talking about ice cream and everybody likes ice cream. And so you got to find that common ground. It's like, what do we all want? Everybody just wants to live and to love and to find, their way in this world. And so we got to start off with what is the baseline thing that we can all agree on? What is in the best good and, does the most for the most people? Government often oversteps, I think, into the social realm in a way that then gets them in trouble. So I think that if we stick to the basics and doing them well, right? Like government was, concepted to do the things that we all decided as a society that we just didn't want to have to tackle ourselves, right? We didn't want to hire our own police force. We didn't want to build our own roads and our utilities. and things of that nature. And so we pool our resources to have those things taken care of as a collective. But then what we choose to do with our lives and what we choose to believe and do and say and have those freedoms, well, those are ours as a community to determine and to say what is or is not allowed. When it comes to things like ICE, I got asked about that. City Council is not responsible for immigration law. The Edmonds Police Department is not responsible for immigration enforcement. That is not part of anything that they are. If you feel like you need them, don't hesitate to call. They are not going to ask to see your immigration status. That is, they have way too many things on their plate. That is not something that they are charged with worrying about. And we have an extra layer in Washington State. We are a sanctuary state. So our Governor Ferguson has made it clear that that's not something that he would support. So we are so many steps removed from, I feel like, that being an issue that the people of Edmonds should concern themselves with. I mean, outside of somebody masquerading in a fake costume, right, which could happen anywhere. I think that just comes down to being safe, asking the right questions in that environment. But as far as reducing polarization, I think we spend too much time talking about what's different and not enough time talking about what's the same, and focusing on what we have in common and what we hope, to dream and build together. And yeah, there could be two different paths to get there, but let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish, because that's what's more important than the how. And then the how has a way of working itself out as we kind of back our way into it.
Well, I feel like a lot of stuff is about to ramp up now. It's pretty relatively quiet going through the primary. You didn't have to do anything, just kind of hung out, and I saw you around town. And then now that we're getting closer to the general and the ballots are going to drop soon, I want to let you have the last 2 minutes to share what you want to with the audience. Because like I said, I know that more forums and stuff are going on where you'll all be kind of together and you'll have your kind of seconds and moments of sound bites. But what do you want to convey to the person that opens their mailbox, sees that there's a ballot there, like, oh, I need to vote for somebody. Let me go hopefully watch some of these videos and see which person aligns with me the most. What party message do you want to leave for folks about what you're doing and your qualification?
Yeah, I want to leave you with the fact that I'm running because I love Edmonds. I want this to remain a place where families thrive, businesses succeed, and that neighbors feel safe. My campaign, as we talked about, rests on 3 pillars: public safety, fiscal responsibility, and quality of life. I feel like that's a practical foundation for good government. With my background in global planning, local business owner, and community service, I have the experience and the passion to deliver results. So on November 4th, you're not just voting for a candidate, you're voting for the future of Edmonds. So let's choose a future that's safe, sustainable, and true to the community we love. Let's go, Edmonds.
All right, that's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Erika Barnett, for joining me for this conversation. Thank you for those that have been watching live and those who will watch later. Hopefully this has been educational for you, as it has been for me across all of these. So Erika, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. And to everybody else, again, thank you so much for being a part of this, participating, sending in your questions, sending in your feedback. It's been a wonderful journey in going through this. It's the first time that Northwest Washington Civic Circle has done anything like this. But like I said, I hope that this will be a great tool for the candidates and for the residents and constituents and stakeholders as well. Hopefully you were able to learn a bit more about each of the candidates, whether they were incumbent or first time running. And please, please, please exercise your right to vote. So with that, have a wonderful rest of your evening, rest of your month, and we'll see you somewhere around